Today we're going to be looking at gradient, and we're going to look at some examples of gradient and how to calculate it. So first, a definition of what gradient is. Gradients represent how steep a slope is. So uphill slopes are positive, downhill slopes are negative. Gradients are important in ski slopes. It's really important to know how steep a slope is for safety reasons. Also in road signs, again for safety reasons. And also ramp access, disabled access, to know how steep a ramp is also really important for safety reasons. Ramps can only be a certain steepness, and gradient is really important to be able to assess that. Okay, so we can measure gradient. So the gradient or slope is measured as how far up we have gone compared to how far across we've gone. And you'll often see gradient represented as the letter m. So m equals the distance up divided by the distance across. So for this example here, a mountain biker is going up a gradient, so up is 2, across is 2, so 2 divided by 2 gives us the gradient of 1. But we're going to look at some more examples now. So calculating the gradient. The steepness of a hill can be measured using the gradient, which is what we've just discussed. So here we've got a ramp, let's say, and it is 100 meters across and 20 meters up. Also represented as vertical distance divided by horizontal distance. I often think of up over across or up over along. Just know that the up distance comes first. So we're going to take that 20 meters, divide it by 100 meters, and we can simplify it to get 1 over 5. And it could also be represented as a decimal, so you would do 1 divided by 5 to get 0.2. Remember fractions, this means divide 1 divided by 5. Or as a percentage, so times your decimal by 100 to get 20%. Okay, let's look at an example. Gradients are also really important again for safety reasons, as how steep a ladder is. So we can calculate the steepness of this ladder by taking our up distance, so our vertical distance of 6, and dividing it by our horizontal distance to get 3. So we've got a gradient of 3 here. The next slide, I'm going to ask you to try this one by yourself, remembering that gradient equals up over along, or vertical divided by horizontal, whatever way you prefer to remember it. So if you can pause the video here and calculate the gradient of this ladder. Okay, hopefully you've unpaused and you've managed to give that a go. So gradient equals up over along, 5 divided by 2, which equals 2.5. So well done if you got that. We can also use calculating the gradient to compare slopes. So here we're going to decide which hill is steeper. So our first hill, the green one, we will calculate the gradient, 30 divided by 100, so 3 divided by 10, and then 36, so you're up over along, divided by 108 to get a third. When you're comparing gradients, you will have them as a fraction, but it's much easier to compare gradients when they're decimal form. So change this into a decimal by doing 3 divided by 10 to get 0.3, and then 1 divided by 3 to get 0.333, and so on. And it's much easier to compare these two numbers, and we can clearly see that 0.333 is greater than 0.3. Therefore, the second hill is steeper. So when you're asked to compare gradients, you want to calculate the gradient of each slope, change it into a decimal, and then compare using the greater than or less than sign, and then make a decision which one is steeper. Make sure you're answering your question at the very end. Again, can you please pause the video here and decide which hill is steeper? Okay, hopefully you have unpaused now, and let's go over the answer. So gradient of the first slope, your up distance over along, so 25 divided by 100, and it's a quarter, and a quarter as a decimal is 0.25. I forgot to mention as well that there isn't any units after gradient, it's just a number, as long as you've got gradient equals and then your number. Gradient of the second slope, 36 over 120, so 3 divided by 10 is 0.3. And in the last part, you're going to compare these two, and clearly 0.3 is greater than 0.25, which means the second hill is steeper. So well done if you got those.